Se nos sacrifice, translating sun. We'll experience the other side with the bullets not flying for years. So gain it good, and I can call translating sun.
Well, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, Chris here with Indaba, Africa, coming to you from central Pennsylvania. I hope that wasn't too complicated and confusing. Sorry about that. I was trying something new, getting this thing working. So welcome once again to Indaba, Africa. Chris here. Good to see you guys. Let's see. Just Ago says, is it working? Well, apparently it's not working because it's operator timing and headspace. Once again, you guys get to deal with the amateurish development of my YouTube channel. My apologies for that. And I just want to play a little bit of music in the background there from Giselle to get us started. For those in South Africa, it's a tribute to you all. Afrikaans, die taal is in ons bloed. I think that folks in South Africa might appreciate that. Wesley, Dagaboy, Hank, Jacques, Justigos, Lone Wolf ZA. Well, welcome aboard, everybody. Glad to see you could tune in tonight. Looks like a little bit of competition. I noticed that another South African YouTuber decided to go on at this time, but I decided a few hours back. Today, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening across the continent, in particular in Libya. I don't do a lot of coverage of Libya. That's because a lot of people do cover it. But today, I was called by the Washington Examiner, one of the top newspapers in Washington, D.C., to be interviewed for an article that they ran this afternoon about 2.5 hours ago on what's happening in Libya. So I thought I'd bring that up. And no, Ronaldo's not on now, Doug. I think Roman is on. That's not an invitation to my subscribers to leave to go to Roman's channel. But I think I got a notification saying Roman was going to do a stream now. Driad, welcome. Good to see you guys. Mr. Punisher, good to see same sort of folks in here again and new folks joining us. So let's get right to the events I want to talk about here. For those who do not know, the U.S. Africa Command issued a press release today, the 26th of May, 2020, in which they say that Russia has deployed military fighter aircraft to Libya. And they discuss this. Bosch Zebra, welcome. Good to see you there. Yes, the U.S. Africa Command, and I wouldn't say unprecedented, but in a highly unusual move, the Africa Command Public Affairs Office under Chris Carnes released this statement for the public today on the AFRICOM website, hence the reason why the Washington Examiner reporter had contacted them to ask questions about what was happening with this. Hey, Joubert, what was going on here with this Russian deployment? What we're talking about is, for those who are unfamiliar with the situation, the Russians have been deeply enmeshed and involved in the conflict in Libya that's been taking place for about 13 months now. Khalifa Haftar's forces were on the gates of Tripoli, but then were unable to take the city itself after encountering much of the country in the center and east. And now recently, Turkish-backed government forces have been pushing them back, and it's reported as many as 1,200 Russian mercenaries working for the Wagner Group, or Wagner Group if you're an American, for the Wagner Group had fallen back. And so in response to this, there's been a lot of reporting from Al Jazeera, from Reuters, and a number of other news sources about these events in Libya. But what did happen is now, in the past number of hours, Russian aircraft, advanced fighter aircraft, have been deployed to central Libya. And these are not transport aircraft. There were previously some AN-32s, Antonov 32s, a twin-engine prop transport aircraft that can carry 42 paratroopers or 50 civilians. So, yeah, Al Jazeera's poised. So is Daga, man. Daga is bad for you, too. But yeah, so yeah, when it comes to the Middle East, I would say that Al Jazeera reporting is something you need to take with a grain of salt. But I must say this, that looking across Africa, normally for much of the continent, when Al Jazeera does news coverage, it's most of the time objective, and it's something you can actually watch there. We got some more folks coming in. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Glad to see you here. HBM Air, hey, want to tell you must go watch Funny Afrikaans comedy show. I'll have to check that out. Thanks. Send me a note on that HBM Air and I'll check it out. Yeah, Daga says it's a matter of opinion on whether Daga is bad for you. Okay. Well, I guess it's the same about Al Jazeera. I'm not promoting Al Jazeera, but making that point. By the way, today, for those paying close attention, I am wearing a Stormers jersey. Here, come on, I keep getting this backwards. There you go. I got a Stormers jersey on. This is the road jersey. Not advertising for DHL, but this is a Stormers road jersey, one of the dark ones from a season or two ago for Super Rugby. And really cool one. I like this one. Although I prefer the blue ones, this was kind of different, and I liked it. Not a big fan of the Marvel jerseys they got. They look kind of weird. But anyway, yeah. And then behind me, I have a Scotland 2011 Rugby World Cup scarf that's hanging on the map behind me. And of course, as always, I am accompanied by my friend, the Boca, sitting right here. And I've also brought some other attention with me along with my celebration for 1,000 subscribers a couple days ago. This is the Kumamon Bear from Kumamoto, Japan, who was there for the Rugby World Cup. It's a mascot of that. And of course, for anyone says anything that sets me off or gets me nervous, I always have my therapy, Hemsbach. So if I get a little out of sorts, I can fall back to my Hemsbach for therapy there. Anyway, just a little bit of lighthearted moments there as we talk about this stuff. Smoke weed every day. No, thank you. Never touched it, guys. I'm not going to comment on the efficacy or the usefulness of it, but this is, I said, not unprecedented, but unusual for the U.S. Africa Command to issue a press release like this about another country. Virtually every press release you see from any combatant command is either current events taking place in which they're involved in or something in the future they'll be involved in. So normally a press release from the Africa Command will be an explanation about an exercise or some information on a particular program that the public has interest in that the U.S. Africa Command or its subordinate commands are doing across the continent. But no, this is one saying that Russia deploys military fighter aircraft to Libya. William Vanderwall, good to see you there. Finally have a Stormers jersey. Yeah, I do. I haven't been wearing them for a while. But I thought it was time to put a Stormers jersey back on, even though we're not talking specifically about South Africa tonight. Well, hey, speaking of South Africa, I originally thought about scheduling this live stream just to do a straight voltage since I saw that the president was going to come on, not during the stream, but discuss what he talked about afterwards. But the deputy president gave us a nothing burger. Really wasn't much there. Well, thank you for sharing with us that South Africans are people of deep faith. We had no idea, Cyril. That was big news to us. So with the nothing burger that President Ramaphosa gave to us this evening from South Africa, not really much to talk about. So focusing on, and I had a feeling that was going to be the case with the events in Libya. I thought I would go ahead and talk about this topic, but we can talk about South Africa if folks want to, or Botswana, or Liberia, whatever you guys want to talk about. But let me read a few statements from this. So U.S. Africa Command assesses that Moscow recently deployed military fighter aircraft to Libya in support of Russian state-sponsored private military contractors operating on the ground there. That would be the Wagner Group, which reportedly has 1,200 Russian mercenaries on the ground. Russian military aircraft are likely to provide close air support and offensive fires for the Wagner Group, PMC, that is supporting the Libyan National Army in their fight against the Government of National Accord. The GNA, the Government of National Accord, is the government recognized by the United Nations in Libya. Although the country has not had a functioning central government for several years, the GNA is the one recognized by the United Nations. Additionally, the GNA has tremendous support from the government of Turkey. Ankara is backing the GNA forces, and that's one of the reasons why they've been successful in recent weeks. The Russian aircraft arrived in Libya from an airbase in Russia after transiting Syria, where it was assessed they were repainted to camouflage their Russian origin. Well, these aren't exactly aircraft that lots of countries have, so it's pretty obvious what's going on there. So General Stephen Townsend, the commander of U.S. Africa Command, said that Russia is clearly trying to tip the scales in its favor in Libya. Just like I saw them doing in Syria, they are expanding the military footprint in Africa using government-supported mercenary groups like Wagner. For too long, Russia has denied the full extent of its involvement in the ongoing Libyan conflict. Well, there's no denying it now. We watched as Russia flew fourth-generation jet fighters to Libya every step of the way. Neither the LNA nor government private military companies can arm, operate, and sustain these fighters without state support they're getting from Russia. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Russia can no longer deny to the world that they are actively engaged through proxies in the conflict in Libya. Now, why might Russia be doing this? I was asked this question by the Washington Examiner's journalist earlier today, and one of the points I made is that many people have made the point, many analysts, that they think Russia is trying to get a foothold in the Mediterranean basin from the south side. They already have one on the eastern side of the Mediterranean with now the ability to operate out of bases in Syria, and so now they have one on the southern flank. And with this, it could give them geostrategic advantage. This is, I think, a legitimate argument to make. It's certainly not about oil. Russia doesn't need Libya's oil. Even if they had all of Libya's oil production, if it was actually in production right now, it would have very little impact on the global oil market. And there's very little beyond that might be of interest in Libya other than its geographic location. And the fact to have a chance to be on the ground floor to support an opposition movement that could become the government. Now, in addition to this, U.S. Air Force General Jeff Harrigan, the commander of the U.S. Air Forces Europe, Africa, U.S. Air Forces Europe, said that if Russia seizes bases on Libya's coast, the next logical step is they deploy permanent long-range anti-access area denial capabilities. Now, A2AD, anti-access area denial, weapons and capabilities are things that are of great concern to the U.S. military, and is one of the top priorities for finding countermeasures to dealing with that. This is one of the top subjects we talked about frequently when I was at the War College here in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So this is a serious concern from a geostrategic standpoint for Russia being a destabilizing factor in the region. So U.S. Africa Command issued this press release today, quite remarkable. In addition to that, now this is almost unprecedented. It's pretty rare that you see something like this. U.S. Africa Command issued the press release, but check this out, ladies and gentlemen. This is what they also did. Let me reduce my size there a little bit so I get this room in there. Just a moment. Here it is. U.S. Africa Command also issued this photograph, which is of a MiG-29 Fulcrum, the latest generation advanced fighter aircraft. And this is at Al Jufra Airfield in Libya, which is in the center of Libya. And this is a MiG-29 being towed by a airfield support vehicle across the airstrip there. Look at that. Now, how often do we see aerial photography like this provided by the U.S. government within hours of these events happening? Clearly, this is something of grave concern to U.S. Africa Command, to the United States National Command Authority, that they would publicly release this in order to get attention on Russia's actions in Libya. So I thought that was quite fascinating to see that photograph that they put out there. Now, with regard to the article, I will put the link into the stream in case people want to pull it up. But take me just a moment here because I actually had my browser closed. I didn't realize that. But yeah, so what happened here is, as I mentioned, the Washington Examiner sent me requested that I just a moment here, copy link location. There we go. All right, so let me post. I got to go. I'm in the wrong place. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, so the Examiner contacted me earlier today and asked me to comment on what was happening in Libya. And so this article that they ran this afternoon might be of interest to folks. So I thought I'd share this with you so you can take a look at it. Now, why is I'm not seeing chat there. No, that's not right. Okay, that's not right. Strange. All right. So let me get back here. I don't understand what the deal with that is. Your channel. Okay, sorry about that, folks. I want to share this link with you so you guys can find it, and I'm not getting to where I need to. It should take me here we go. All right, so to where I need to. It should take me here we go. All right. Okay, that's on mute. Here we go. Right, there's the link, ladies and gentlemen. You can check that out if you like. That is a link to the Washington Examiner article that talks about it. Matt just jumped in. I thought Turkey was getting jiggy in Libya. They are getting jiggy, Matt. I mentioned that. They're supporting the government forces, the ones backed by the United Nations. Daga Boy says they're probably better siding with the Russia than with the U.S. as their relation percent. Okay. Freistadt is everyone's second team. All right, so yeah, so if you see that link there, if you want to check it out either now or later while we're chatting, but let me just read a few things that come from that article that I think are particularly important to discuss here. And then, they're from the Africa Command, and also my comments about some of the things that were said in the article. So here we go. So in the article, which came out from Abraham Mashishi, which is, he writes for the Washington Examiner today, May 26th. He quotes Colonel Chris Carnes, who's from U.S. Africa Command Public Affairs Office, says at least 14 advanced Russian aircraft, a mix of MiG-29 fighters and Su-24s, is definitely of concern. It is suspected that Wagner mercenaries will operate the aircraft. And he also said Russia is clearly trying to tip the scales in its favor in Libya. Now, among the things that I was quoted as, here you go. So this is one thing I was quoted. Now it seems like it's more than influence. They want a presence there, and that could be disturbing. Retired Colonel Chris Wyatt, former director of the African Studies at the U.S. Army War College, told the Washington Examiner. In Libya, with these recent developments, we have to start to question whether, in fact, Russia's view is to back Haftar's forces so they can overthrow the national government, he added. That would give them tremendous influence in newly controlled Libya by Haftar's forces. And later they quoted me also saying that Moscow was probably a bit surprised to find the U.S. government releasing aerial imagery of photographs of the aircraft on the ground. They probably didn't anticipate that. So the reason I mention that is that I was asked by the journalist about, well, Russia's denying this. And I said, well, you should expect them to deny it. They denied that they were in Syria for the longest time. For a few years, they denied they're there. When we saw Russian soldiers and pilots on the ground in Syria, we had photographic and video evidence of them being there, not to mention all sorts of intelligence to back that. But Russia is clearly operating in Libya now and using the Wagner Group as cover for its operations. But you don't send 14 MiG-29s and Su-24s to Libya. That's a long flight. You have to stop in Syria, refuel, and you don't repaint them. and send them there unless you're up to something nefarious. So my point is that so clearly, these present a couple of things for the forces on the ground. For Haftar's forces, these aircraft present a couple of things. Number one, since they can provide close air support, if Haftar's forces withdraw, the Libyan National Army withdraws, it's not really an army, it's his army, the Libyan National Army. If it withdraws continually from pressure from the government-backed forces and the Turkish-backed forces, these will provide close air support to make the extraction of these folks easier and less dangerous for them. But it is also an offensive option so that if they want to use these aircraft in an offensive manner for close air support and go on the offense, they now have that capability. 14 aircraft gives them quite a capability in Libya. If we were engaged in the Gulf War in Iraq in 1990, 14 aircraft would make a difference, but not nearly the difference they can make here in this environment. So quite a significant development taking place in Libya with the Russians upping the ante against the UN-backed government forces that are there, who are also backed by the Turks. So another thing that he asked me, I said, is that Wyatt added, however, that Russia's interest in Libya goes beyond its sub-Saharan economic interest as the continent's top arms dealer. Moscow and the other backers of Haftar were probably frustrated they never took Tripoli, he said. Clearly, these 14 high-performance aircraft are not something that belong to a private military corporation. This is a government deployment. That's what I said, ladies and gentlemen, and quoted today. You can find it in that link there that I posted from the Washington Examiner if you want to check it out. That tells a story about what's happening today with quotes from U.S. Africa Commander, its Public Affairs Officer, and USAFE, United States Air Force's Europe Commander, all remarking on the deployment of Su-24s and MiG-29s to Libya to support the Wagner Group, which is a Russian private military corporation engaged in all sorts of activity across the continent. Anyway, that's just a little bit about what's happening in Libya. I thought it was important to talk about that today. It was news. I might make a video on this a little bit later on, trying to compose my thoughts about how I want to do it. For those of you who follow my channel, I haven't done any reporting on Libya. I've been following it, but not reporting on it because I wasn't sure of the interest level for it. But if people are interested in it, it's something I will pay attention to. Unusually for a sub-Saharan African foreign area officer in the Army, normally our region is below the Sahara. I actually have a significant amount of experience in the Sahara and in the Maghreb, having been stationed in Tunisia and done multiple trips to Morocco for business, and also had a few other activities going on there. But that's rather unusual for an Africa specialist. I know it's part of Africa geographically, but in the U.S. Army, it's broken down so that North Africa is considered with the Middle East. And so those who serve in Iraq, in Israel, in Jordan, Saudi Arabia also serve in Morocco, Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, and Egypt. So anyway, so it's unusual for someone from, as the French would say, from Afrique Noire, Black Africa, Dark Africa, that a person would also have experience in the North. But I do, so it's a little unusual. I'm kind of happy that I had that experience. It gives me a little more enlightenment and ability to speak credibly about events taking place there. Louis Roberts, hi Chris. Any info on the India-China scuffle? No, are you talking about the one that happened several days ago with overflight issues? No, I haven't really paid much attention to that, but I can take a closer look at it. Let me make a note of that here, Louis, since there's some interest in that. China, India, and I can give you some feedback on that one. Yeah, so let's see what else we got here. Comments. The Libyan army will defeat Turkey. Really? Tariq, you think? What was your position in the Army? Okay, Doggy Boy, that's a good question. By the way, so those who know, I usually have my Starbucks here beside me, but today I ventured out in the midst of our lockdown because the restrictions have been eased slightly here in Pennsylvania. And I actually got genuine Frappuccino. Most of it's gone by now. Hopefully it's COVID-free. We'll see. All right, so yeah, what was my position in the Army? Well, I served 36 years in the Army. I started as an enlisted soldier during the Cold War and was a signal soldier. So I did radio relay, and that was in Germany, or West Germany at the time, back in the 1980s. I left the Army, went to university, back to university, and was in the Ohio National Guard for a couple of years, where I worked in air defense in Ohio, and a rather ancient air defense system, which you don't find anymore, AAA, anti-aircraft artillery, the M42 Duster. After that, I came back in active duty as intelligence officer, as a lieutenant, and I served all over the world in intelligence at the tactical, the operational, and the strategic level. I worked at the Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, the Pentagon. I taught university at Iowa State University, and then I taught postgraduate education in national security strategy and policy at the Army War College here nearby in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I served across Africa and Europe and the Middle East, and that included 3 tours in Germany, 1 in Italy, and then also I served in Africa in the following locations: in Tunisia, Liberia, Botswana, Malawi, Niger, Mauritania, Uganda, and Ethiopia at the U.S. mission to the African Union. So served quite a few places, done a lot of different things, involved in health programs, development, counterterrorism, peacekeeping, war. That's not something to put on your CV, but it's a fact. And done a lot of different things. So if you pick a topic, I may have been involved in it. And since I was an intelligence officer that looked at intelligence holistically, I've always been focused on much more than what people presume is intelligence. So, for instance, I paid a lot of attention to development and to business and banking and such, because I think that's important. Those are all things that affect national security. So, anyway, so I hope that I answered your question there, Daga. I had a lot of positions in the Army, a lot of positions. Tercia, can you chat about the insurgents in Mozambique? Tercia, I did about a week or two ago. I discussed the insurgents in Mozambique. This started out as a few isolated attacks, something that a number of us warned people about a decade ago, that this could be a possibility. Not just that, but also piracy off the coast of Mozambique was something that we raised. I know I did that when I was at the Africa Command about 8 years ago, 8, 9 years ago. And people weren't interested. I said, well, you're going to have a problem if you're not interested now. And there you go. So the insurgency taking place in northern Mozambique is groups that are loosely affiliated with Al Qaeda and ISIS. And what's happening is that they are not just committing acts of terrorism, it's actually an insurgency taking place in northern Mozambique, in a region in which the government really doesn't have much in the way of governance control to begin with. So what's happening in Mozambique is quite tragic, and they're just going in and wiping out villages and towns. It's happened repeatedly in Cabo Delgado province, and it's quite sad to see this happening. And the Mozambican forces don't really have the capacity to deal with this. It's very easy at such a remote location, so far distant, to strike long before government forces can respond. And so I'm very concerned about the safety and welfare about people in northern Mozambique, and also geostrategically for the region. This is a serious concern. Hopefully SADC could do something, but I wouldn't hold my breath on that. SADC is just a place to discuss things. It's a hot air windbag section where people talk about things and rarely do anything. But it would be nice to see the African Union take notice of this, although I don't think they're going to do anything. But we shall see. Mozambique is a real serious problem in the northern part there, what's taking place, Tercia. So thank you for bringing that up. Lone Wolf says, my brother does farm work in America, stuck in Abu Dhabi. Well, that's an unusual place for a farmer to be, in Abu Dhabi. Where does your brother do the farm work, and what sort of farm work is it there, Lone Wolf? I was a dairy farmer when I was in high school in Ohio, in rural Appalachia. Seems to be getting worse. It's on our borders, and I really do not like it. Well, it's on your borders, Tercia, but I mean, it's geographically very far from where you're at in South Africa. I mean, you've got to go all the way from the northern tier of Mozambique down through the south, and then pass through Kruger before you even get to South African soil and South African citizens. But yes, it is something to be concerned about. I agree. This sort of thing can metastasize and become a real problem. And that's sort of what happened with Boko Haram in Nigeria. Boko Haram had legitimate grievances against the government when they were first organized, and what happened was they were ignored by the government, and then the government was nervous about them. They arrested its leader, and the leader and hundreds of his followers were killed in extrajudicial fashion. And that really sparked an insurgency, terrorism, all outright terrorism and insurgency. And ever since then, it's just kept growing, become such a problem. And they've become nastier and nastier. And the original people who were behind the concept of Boko Haram are really marginalized, and it's being led by people, for the most part, who have evil intent. And that's unfortunate. We don't need to see that sort of situation metastasize in Mozambique, but it is a very real possibility. Like I said, I would call it an insurgency right now, and less of a terrorist action, although it's inspired by terrorism. And those are some of the techniques and tools used by these folks. It's really an insurgency at the moment. Daga Boy saying, what are your family ties to the military, father, grandfather? Well, my father didn't serve in the military. He passed away just a couple of years ago at the age of 86, or 84, 86. 86 it was. But yeah, my father didn't serve in the military, but my grandfather on my maternal side did serve. He landed at Normandy in 1944. D-Day, and then fought with U.S. forces against the Germans until the end of the war. So he was a veteran of that. And then going back, every major conflict in American history, and even minor conflicts like the Whiskey Rebellion and let's see what else, that's one of them. But every major conflict in U.S. history, even colonial history, I have ancestors that served in uniform and fought for the United States or for the colonies when they were still colonies. So it goes back quite a ways. I have 7 of my 8 great-great-grandfathers who served in the Union Army in the American Civil War for the North, either for Maryland or for West Virginia when it broke away. So I have a lot of ancestors who served there. But in more recent times, the only military tie really has been me, because my grandfather didn't really know him very well. So my motivation to go to the military had nothing to do with family ties. It's not a long family history of things. In fact, it's kind of an anomaly. Although my brother did serve in the Ohio National Guard, but that was just briefly, and his job was to burn weed. So folks that like the dogging, you want to solve. My brother's job on weekends when he was in the Guard and his 2 weeks in the summertime was to fly around in helicopters and find marijuana fields in southeastern Ohio and to torch them. That was his job. Anyway, so let's see. Kruger's just 4 hours away. Yeah, okay, Tercia, yes, Kruger's 4 hours away from you, but Cabo Delgado by car is a couple days away from you. It's just over 1,000 kilometers more beyond that. So I get your point. I understand your concern. It's something to be worried about, but it's not on your doorstep. It's quite a ways away. If it were in Maputo, then I would be very concerned about it being a near-term threat. But it is quite far away. But with government forces pretty thin in Mozambique, it doesn't mean that these folks, if they have the resources and personnel, couldn't push further south. But right now, they're pretty much confined to the north with their insurgency. Sean says, read about those. That a twin 40 millimeter turret was also used in close. Yep. In fact, the unit that I was in, the Ohio National Guard, back from 1987 to 89, that Alpha Battery of the 274th Air Defense Artillery Battalion, there were soldiers in that battalion who had served in Vietnam with those particular anti-aircraft guns, and they were the same ones they used in Vietnam. And in the late 80s, we were still using them, twin 40 millimeter. They weren't used very often against aircraft because you can only shoot at slow movers. You don't have much chance of hitting high performance jets zipping by with a AAA. But they were used frequently against ground targets in ground support, and they were quite effective in that role, the twin 40 millimeter cannons. Yep, open turret. You'd sit there and crank it and you'd spin around. It was kind of cool. Anyway, well, we lost a few folks from earlier, so I'm wondering if the topic bored some folks. My apologies if that's the case. I guess when I'm not talking just South Africa, I don't get all my South Africa subscribers, although a lot of folks here tonight are South Africa subscribers, so thank you for tuning in. Hope you find this interesting. Also, like I said, I think Roman's on now, so maybe he's poaching a few of my viewers, or I'm poaching a few of his viewers, but whatever the case is. Those of you here, hopefully you find this an interesting discussion and illuminating. So your brother's wife is a teacher in Abu Dhabi. Yeah, I watched a video on YouTube last night about the islands, the artificial islands that they were producing in Abu Dhabi, and how 10 years later, what a mess it's all become for a number of reasons. One, because they didn't really plan quite well for water circulation. So in Jebel, whatever, the Palmery thing, one of them, Palm Jebel, and the others, the water doesn't flow properly. So you get stench, you get stagnant water, and you don't get water refreshed. And the breakwaters aren't as effective as they thought they were. So it's been quite a mess apparently there in Abu Dhabi with these artificial islands that were being created. So they've spent a lot of money in some cases and not much has come of it. But anyway, so that's interesting. But yeah, I've never been to Abu Dhabi. I've never even flown through it. My flights take me directly to Europe. I don't go through that part of the world, although I know a lot of people who have. Gowan Valley is latest. Was the flare-up for 62 war. Was busy researching. Your stream started. Oh, okay. Well, thanks for coming in, Lewis. Appreciate being here. What good night. LOL. Huh? He works in Valentine, Nebraska as a heavy farming machinery operator. Well, thank you, Lone Wolf. Okay, cool. Nebraska, yeah. I used to live in Iowa. I taught at Iowa State University. It's very similar to Nebraska culturally, ethnically. The people who settled both of those states come from the same sort of ethnic background. So quite interesting. But, it's kind of like the high veld. Not much elevation change. So I like mountains. So if I was there, I'd have to be close enough to the Mahalisburg or to the Drakensberg to make it interesting for me. So it's not too far away. But yeah, cool. Nebraska, it's interesting. Huh. Missionaries from South Africa have been involved in decades in helping rural villages build schools and water points. Could this be in retaliation because of Christian influence in Mozambique? Well, when you say Christian influence, the Christianity is a major religion in Mozambique. It's only in the north that you see Islam with much of a foothold in Mozambique. It doesn't mean it's not everywhere, but it's primarily in the northern part. No, I think this has a lot more to do with the low state of development in the northern part of Mozambique, the poor governance and the inability of the government to extend its governance effectively in that part of the country, and frankly, its neglect of the northern tier of Mozambique. The authorities in Maputo with Frelimo tend to be focused on the bottom tier of the country. That's where most of the development money goes and most of their effort goes. In fact, northern Mozambique could be another country for all we know, based on how far away it is and how little governance is actually applied. So I think that has a lot more to do with it. Doc says, Rule says mountains rock. I live on the northern side of the Arbuckle Mountains, the second oldest mountain range. I thought the Mahalisburg was the second oldest mountain range in the planet. I might be mistaken about that. I think Australia had the oldest rocks found on the planet from almost 4.5 billion years ago or something like that. And then Mahalisburg is supposedly the second. Yeah, Mozambique does have gas. I have lots of gas. It's offshore. They're developing it, and American companies are involved in that, and that's been going on for some time. Third oldest. It might be the third oldest. Yeah, it might be. Whatever the case is, parts of South Africa are quite ancient. We know that. As are hominids. Lots of human species having lived there. Most recently, the ones at Sterkfontein, found in Mahalisburg at the Cradle of Humankind. They found Homo naledi, of course, Tswana word, naledi meaning star. Homo naledi being the most recent type of hominid found there. Quite exciting discovery just in the past couple of years. For those who've never been there, you should check out the Cradle of Humankind in South Africa. It's located in the Mahalisburg mountain range, just northwest of Johannesburg and southwest of Pretoria. Quite an amazing place to go. And if you go there, it's not just that. You can see the Mahalisburg is a fantastic holiday vacation destination with hot air ballooning, quad bikes, zip line or canopy tours where you slide across a ravine on a cable. And then there's also horseback riding, things like that. So the Mahalisburg, if you go up to the Cradle of Humankind, there's a lot more to do in the area. So check it out sometime if you are ever in South Africa. If you are South African, you've never been there, you should check out the Mahalisburg. Now, if you live in the Western Cape, I'll give you a break. It's a bit of a drive. You wouldn't want to fly up just for that. But if you find yourself in Gauteng and you have a little bit of time on your hands, a weekend or something like that, you should go to the Mahalisburg. Look at that, free advertising for the Mahalisburg. So Bosch says, why did NATO not send a peacekeeping force to Libya post-Gaddafi? Would have possibly prevented the current situation. Yeah, well, the problem with that is it's quite complicated, Bosch, and let me explain. So if we go back in time to when Gaddafi was sending the security forces into Benghazi and butchering innocent civilians, there were several large African countries that were screaming. The African Union wasn't prepared, didn't have the capability to deploy forces there, and didn't have the inclination or desire. They just wanted to complain about it. But they demanded that someone do something. And then they said that the West, and then NATO, and the U.S. should do something. So honestly, my personal view on this is that at the time, many African states, including South Africa's ANC, were vociferous about this because they wanted the West to threaten Gaddafi. And many of them knew that Gaddafi had become one of our best friends. Now, I know that sounds ironic, but for decades, Gaddafi was a serious terrorist threat to the United States. But what happened late in events after 9/11 is that Gaddafi saw what happened in Iraq, and he didn't want any part of the U.S. coming after him. So what happened was he became very cooperative in the fight on counterterrorism. In fact, he revealed lots of terrorist training bases, locations, names, dates, things like that, which made it very helpful for the U.S. and its allies to fight the global war on terrorism. Not a particularly well-known fact publicly, but it's not a state secret that happened. That is open source. So what happened is that a number of African governments pretty much demanded that the West, and the U.S. in particular, do something about Gaddafi to stop him from slaughtering civilians. And they called for armed intervention. Well, my view on this is that I don't think they truly cared about armed intervention. They didn't want armed intervention. They wanted us to have the threat of armed intervention because they foolishly and naively believed that if we threatened Gaddafi with bombing him like we did in 1986, that he would stop this behavior. What I think a lot of Africans didn't realize is just how tenuous Gaddafi's grip was on Libya before the Arab Spring and in the midst of the Arab Spring when this was going on. So Gaddafi really didn't have much maneuver space to simply stop attacking insurgents in Benghazi, among other places. His security forces were being pressed hard. So when African governments asked the West to intervene, they didn't really think we would intervene. They just wanted the threat of intervention. Well, guess what? Buyer's remorse, ladies and gentlemen. It wasn't just a threat, it was actual intervention. We intervened with those forces there under the auspices of NATO, with famously Barack Obama hiding in the back with U.S. forces, playing a secondary role in the bombing campaign in Libya. But there was no stomach with NATO or any government to put forces on the ground, and that was never the intent. And of course, we can see what happens when the government collapses. and when then eventually we have chaos. Those who foolishly think that you can simply go in and remove or destroy the capacity of an existing government to exist and then expect everything just go back to normal or for a country to progress are just smoking the wrong daga. Their daga has mercury in it, and it's affecting their thought process. And I think that's a lot about what happened. So there was never any intent for NATO to send troops on the ground. There was no political will or desire for that. It was simply an effort to stop Gaddafi from butchering civilians. And by attacking Gaddafi, he was so weakened and is already in a tenuous position that rebel forces and the popular uprising overthrew him. And we saw what happened to Gaddafi, and we've seen what's happened in Libya ever since then. Of course, the ANC blames the United States and NATO for the Libya situation, but they're as much to blame as anyone else. Absolutely. Now, this led to other complications for the U.S. For instance, in Uganda, Yoweri Museveni was a very close personal friend of Muammar Gaddafi and took great offense to what the West did in Libya. And so this damaged our relations with Uganda immeasurably and made it very difficult for us to do some things with Uganda and also for them to trust us. And then, of course, Barack Obama raising issues about homosexuality, that didn't help the situation. And so while we still have a positive relationship with Uganda when it comes to security in the region, our relationship can be frosty at times in some areas as a consequence of taking out Gaddafi, because now Museveni worries, will we take Museveni out someday? He has that concern. Yeah, so that's an issue. Now, also, the intervention in Libya caused other problems. NATO had a liaison office in Addis Ababa for the African Union. And once NATO bombed Libya, they were persona non grata. They weren't a popular party guest, those liaison officers from NATO who worked there. So they've been working to get their headquarters set up and purchase property, but the Ethiopian government frustrated that for a long time. And so for the longest period of time, a few years, the NATO liaison office was located in the Hilton Hotel in one of the rooms for one of the NATO liaison officers, and that's where they would meet at. And they all lived in the hotel collecting Hilton Honors points by the bucket loads, which was quite good for the NATO officers deployed there. But the relationship eventually, when I was in Ethiopia at the African Union, in 2013, 2014 timeframe, that relationship began to improve dramatically. And officials in the African Union were letting go of the resentment of Western influence and deployment to Libya. But here we are, nearly a decade later, and look, it's still a mess. It's not going to be resolved anytime soon. It's astounding that Gaddafi could rule that country for as long as he did. In part, I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the population was rather small, just over 4 million people for such a long period of time, and incredibly wealthy. Not that the wealth got to all the people, but incredibly wealthy, which gave him the ability to buy people off and pay people to do things that he wanted. Eventually, the Arab Spring kind of did him in, and that's history now. Now. Let's see what else we got here. How can recon this stuff happening in Libya will affect Egypt? Well, I don't think it's too likely that what's happening in Libya will affect Egypt. The Arab Spring has had its time, it's come and gone. Arab tyrants still rule the roost in some respects in Arab countries, and the domestic issues are more of an issue. I don't think anything will spill over from Libya to Egypt. It's more likely that it would be possible for the conflict in Libya to spill over to Tunisia, because actually population centers adjacent to the border or close to the border of Tunisia with Libya, not too far from Tripoli. Whereas on the other side of the country, it's all desert after you get past Benghazi, El Alamein, and there's a long way into Egypt before you start running the population centers. So I don't think it'll have much of an impact. There could be things that inspired from Libya, but we haven't seen much of that. So I don't think that that's going to have much of an impact on Egypt, what's happening in Libya. It's possible, but in the short term, I don't think we'll see much. Next question was, Dachshund's rule says, in your opinion, has membership in the African Union benefited South Africa? Well, it benefited the African National Congress. They found some place to get rid of Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma to send her off and be the chairperson of the African Union Commission for a couple of years, which was when I was in Addis, and she was among the least popular people in the entire country. She was not a popular figure there, and not many people had much in the way of respect for her and didn't really want to deal with her. So has South Africa got much from being in the African Union? The NAPAD, the new Partnership for African Development, NAPAD, which is Thabo Mbeki's brainchild, is endorsed by the African Union. The African Union Parliament actually sits in South Africa, not in Ethiopia, which is bizarre since the headquarters is in Ethiopia. But anyway, yeah, so they have gotten money from diplomats living there in South Africa and spending money and contributing to the economy. And they've got influence. The story with the Organization of African Union and the African Union was that the regional hegemons would never put forward a candidate to be the chairperson of the commission. And South Africa broke the China by putting forward a candidate, which really irritated Nigeria and Algeria. And so when South Africa did that and Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma became the chairperson, they made a lot of enemies in the African Union, and that persists to this day because a lot of people were angry. You know, the expectation was that with a country, an organization with 50 members, 50 plus members, that smaller countries like the Gambia, Senegal, Gabon, Niger, they would be the places where the chairperson would come from. But when South Africa broke the China and broke the rules, they kind of irritated people. So there are some tangible benefits to being in the African Union, but there's nothing substantive that's made a significant difference in South Africa's development since 1994. So there you have it. Um, why didn't the U.S. send troops to Rwanda in 1994? Before I answer that one, let me get to Kader Baja. Sorry if I get that wrong. Gaddafi supported many coups in Africa. In fact, he did. He also built many mosques across Africa, even though he wasn't a particularly devout Muslim. He pretended to be a devout Muslim, and that helped his situation. But Gaddafi did support many coups, and he also built many mosques, which makes him wildly popular in parts of Muslim Africa, in the Sahel, West Africa, and East Africa. He built a huge mosque in Uganda, for example, and he's well remembered and respected for that. His terrorist actions are ignored and forgotten about because most of that was directed against the West and not against Africans. So they forget the carnage that this man caused. But like I said, he became one of the best friends of the West after 9/11, and he cooperated in terrorism. So it's a mixed bag. Back to Rwanda. So Dagaboy, the question, why didn't we intervene in Rwanda in 1994? Well, the short answer to that is because of Somalia in 1992 and Black Hawk Down in 93. In 1993, Black Hawk Down took place, and that was fresh in the memories of the cowardly policymakers at the national level in Washington, D.C. And famously, Susan Rice asked the question, and this was, it has been reported authoritatively. She asked the question, what about the midterm elections? If we intervene, what will happen? So they were worried about being bogged down in a conflict in Rwanda as congressional elections were coming up in the fall. And so we did intervene. And we used a host of excuses as a nation. It's quite shameful, quite shameful. And you can look this up. These aren't state secrets. This is a matter of public record. You can find this on Google, declassified documents, in which we have a message that was classified but it's now declassified, talking about the Commando Solo flights. These are aircraft that have radio jamming capability based in Mombasa at the time. There was aircraft there, and they can jam FM radio frequencies. They could have flown from Mombasa to Rwanda, didn't even have to go into Rwanda, but could fly around the border of such a small country and jam the radio signals. Now, why does that matter? Well, because it became very clear very quickly in the conflict or the genocide in Rwanda, not really conflict, but in that genocide, that the way this was being orchestrated, beyond the planning that took place ahead of time, was that genocideers would send out instructions to people around the country on where to go get the machetes and how to kill people, whom to kill, and when to kill them. So they were using FM radio stations to send their instructions on where to get the crates of machetes so they could round people up and murder them. And we could have jammed those radio signals, but the unclassified or the declassified memo that you'll find talks about this would cost something like $10,000 an hour, and it's not feasible. We can't do this, and that pretty much ended any discussion of it because the U.S. government didn't have any stomach for doing it. The French eventually intervened, but they intervened to extract Western nationals from Rwanda, not to stop the conflict. The only reason the conflict stopped is they were running out of people to murder was part of it, although a lot of people fled. But the other reason it stopped is because Paul Kagame and his rebel force, which was based in Uganda, had been planning an offensive into the country. And in the midst of this, they stepped up their pace and invaded. The genocideers were not prepared to fight a real fight. They were just cowards that wanted to murder innocent women and children and elderly by butchering them with machetes. And so, in a bizarre, vengeful act. So what happened is they were quickly dispatched and fled to the Eastern Congo, disrupting the Eastern Congo, leading to the Congolese Civil War that's taken place now for years. And anywhere between 4 and 6 million people have died because of that conflict, from disease, deprivation, and actual conflict itself. So yeah, the U.S. didn't intervene because of the elections. That's the bottom line. And we had a lot of excuses for it. We couldn't do it. It's not our responsibility. The United Nations doesn't do anything. But there was direct collusion between Kofi Annan, the UN Department of Peacekeeping Operations, and the United States, among others, to not intervene. But the United Nations Security Council refused to do anything, and it was up to the French to evacuate nationals. But nonetheless, a number of Western nationals were butchered and murdered as well. Not nearly anything like what happened to Rwandans, but Yeah, it's a tragic event. I was actually alerted to deploy to Rwanda. This was just before I was supposed to return for my advanced officer course for intelligence, and thought I would be going to Rwanda, but our mission was scrubbed, and we did not go. And then I went back. I went to back to the States to take my advanced intelligence course. Yeah. So Rwanda. I don't give my government, my society a free pass. Shameful conduct. 850,000 people were butchered in a matter of weeks. And to hear government officials like Bill Clinton lie, saying we didn't know it was genocide, when the rest of us were watching CNN, when we still watched CNN, and seeing bodies by the hundreds floating down rivers and people hacked apart, and journalists, brave journalists, capturing this video footage and this horrific activity that was taking place, and having government officials lie to the world saying, well, we don't know it's a genocide. Shameful, shameful, shameful. And in fact, I think these people are complicit in the genocide that took place there. That's not to excuse the behavior of Rwandans who are responsible for the genocide. It wasn't the first one, by the way. This was like the third time this happened in 30 years in Rwanda, plus it had happened in Burundi a couple of times, but it is the most significant one. And the effects of the 1994 genocide are with us to this very day, ladies and gentlemen, and will be with us going on for at least a couple more decades. So let me get back here. Kim Jong Un learned a lot from Iraq and Libyan leader takeout. Maybe. ICE. Oh, okay. Rumor went further, claimed the cash was moved to Eswatini. Not sure about that. ICE says that rumor went further and claimed that cash was moved to Eswatini. Don't think the U.S. would be the biggest fans of their printed notes doing the rounds. I'm not sure what we're talking about there, ICE. If you could be more specific. Bosch says, Chris, thanks for your insights. Feedback, always good to hear your thoughts. Well, thank you, Bosch. I hope it's helpful. Lone Wolf, best to ask the Sunday Times who ran the story. Again, I don't know what that story is, man. Ndali Mizuna is making things difficult. Yeah, well, your president, I'm sorry, your minister for uncooperative and irrational affairs, that would be Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the Minister for Uncooperative and Irrational Affairs in South Africa, is definitely making things difficult for South Africans. Absolutely. Dr. Boy really misses ciggies, getting tired of this lung pollution crap I'm getting. Black market ciggies are full of excess insecticides. Yeah, they're dangerous. Not to mention the loss of revenue to the state, and the origin is questionable for them. So dangerous stuff, folks. My one friend went into nicotine. Okay. You guys are talking about cigarettes, vape. Okay, you run out of, but you can't. Okay, Lone Wolf, can't you order online now in South Africa? I think you can get your vape juice online. Isn't that true? Am I mistaken? Gaddafi's stolen loot may have been hidden in Kandla. Oh, here's what you know about the origins of the money. Yeah, I don't know about that. There's a lot of stories about, but Gaddafi definitely had a lot of money, and it was he had cash all over the place, as did Saddam Hussein and his little thug sons. So these tyrants typically keep cash around in case they've got to skip town, and also just to impress people with it and buy people off on the spot. So tens of millions of cash most likely. But Gaddafi had a lot of money in foreign bank accounts too, and I don't know what happened to that. That's I think a good question, a bigger question. All right, so what else we got here? I need to say, Tata, my phone is dying. Oh, sorry, Just a Ghost. Sorry to see your phone dying. Get that thing on the charge area if you have ESCOM providing electricity for you now. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was told that Zuma secretly received money from Gaddafi. Oh, well, that might be the case. I don't know. Could be. Well, let me take a moment, ladies and gentlemen, to do a little bit of free advertising for some South African businesses here. Those of you who follow my channel are probably familiar with some of the stuff I'm going to do. But let me put up a new one here for you. Move myself back over here. Reduce my image a little bit. All right, and I will bring this one here. So this is from Talon Bezuidenhout, and this is Impulse Graphics. For those of you who have been watching my channel and seen the new graphics I've been running on here, Talon is a provider of those, and I think they're pretty cool. Let me see if I can pull one of those up now, and we'll see what we get here. I got the wrong folder, so I got to get to a different folder. Go to yesterday's folder. Oh no, here we go. And these are things that Talon has provided to me. So you've got the one that I used at the start here. There you go. So I don't know what you guys think of that one, if you like it or not, but it's kind of cool. And I'll show you another one here very quickly. These come from Talon, who does amazing graphics work, for those of you who haven't seen it. And let me play up. This one is from Impulse Graphics. Here we go. Yeah, and that's one of his ads for his service. So if you need graphic design work, folks, you might want to check it out. From Talon Bazidnhut, and I know I pronounced his name incorrectly, so I'll apologize in advance. But I'll show you one last one here, and this is a closeout one, which was kind of cool. Here we go. So that was kind of cool. I really like that. Again, that comes from the talents of Talon Bazidnhut, who does graphic design in South Africa. So there's the website, Impulse, GEFX or EGFX, GFX, excuse me, at .co.za. Check out Impulse Graphics, and if you're looking for some help on graphics for all sorts of things, whatever you might need it for, but check him out. Those graphics that you saw there, the animations were done free of charge for me, so I'm only too happy to promote his business. And in addition to that, for those of you who've seen the character there, this, oh, hang on, I'm really messing up things here. Got the rookie roll going on today. So this is from Shink Art once again. For those of you who have noticed my character up in the top of my stream, that is, those folks do characters, and you can find them at shink.co.za. They do photography for weddings and family portraits, things like that, and also do characters, which can be quite amazing. They make nice gifts to get that for someone that you love or care about, to make a little character of them. So anyway, check out Shink Art. And then the last one I want to promote here today, as I mentioned before, is Giselle. And Giselle is a Namibian singer who is living in Pretoria. She sings folk music, country music in English and Afrikaans, and also Afrikaans pop. She did her live album debut, the album Vir Ons Mense, which I was playing at the start of the stream. She did that here on my channel back in 8th of May, and it was fantastic. If you go to my past live streams, you can find the concert. It's also promoted on the channel, so it's easy to find at the top of my page. And it's really good. It's an hour and 3 minutes. You should check it out. Fantastic, great selection of music, and quite an amazing performance. So I hope that you guys like that. And I just realized that my logo hasn't been up there the whole time. So there's my logo for Indaba Africa, for those who are curious about it. But anyway, so yeah, I just want to do a little housekeeping right there and provide some free advertising for some businesses that I am interested in and care about. I hope that you guys find those businesses interesting and helpful to you. Anyway, so I'm going to move my character over there. There we go. All right. So what have I missed here? Great hearing your expert opinion. First heard you with Willem. So Marty, 1970. Did you hear me on Willem's stream, or did you come to my stream and catch him on my program? Because Willem came on my program and did a stream, and that actually led to a lot of new subscribers who came over. On Willem's channel, in the comments, it also led to a lot of nasty things some people said, which is fine. I think I was accused of being a CIA stooge, stupid and uninformed, and naive, I was told too. That Willem called me naive, but I think that was in the context from Afrikaans to English, something was lost there. I don't think he meant me, but he meant a person can be naive. But I was explaining my position on how the opposition can actually defeat the ANC and drive below 50% in the 2024 elections, but also do it in 2021 municipal elections. Anyway, but there was some nasty things said, but that's fine. People are welcome to say what they like. They're also welcome to not tune in. But I'm glad to see you here, Marty. Thanks for coming over. I appreciate you joining the stream. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. And since you brought that up, or I brought that up, if you're tuning into my stream for the first time, this is Chris Wyatt with Indaba Africa. This stream is dedicated to focusing on geostrategic issues that are of interest to Africa and Africans and those in the African diaspora, as well as those who care about Africa around the world. My goal is to drive an interest in Africa for U.S. businesses in particular, so that we don't become a second-rate global economic power in the year 2050, when Africa will have between 2.3 and 2.5 billion people living on the continent, with a consumer class of at least 1.3 billion Africans. That consumer class would be nearly 4 times the current entire population of the United States. Can you imagine such a huge consumer market? All the opportunities to sell nappies, to sell cars, to sell bubblegum, to sell sporting goods, to sell clothing, to buy things. Quite a tremendous opportunity. So part of my goal is to interest folks in the U.S. and North America in getting involved in Africa. That's why I do this. Right now, because of the lockdown, I'm kind of doing what I consider kind of a public service and just having these more of these stray voltage live streams so that people become aware of the channel and share it with others. In fact, as someone who tuned in to watch me on on Willem's stream, then came to my stream and has a number of groups of South African based in the UK. There's a number of Facebook groups that person is part of, and apparently shared the link to both broadcasts in Facebook groups. That drove a few hundred more subscribers to my channel, and I'm grateful for that. And I appreciate it. Feel free to share my link, my channel with anyone you like, your friend, your family, your foe. If it's someone you don't like, feel free to share it with them. My intent here is to spark discourse. I don't just sit here and talk all the time. Every Saturday, I have a guest on. Last Saturday was Herman Roos, a tobacco farmer based in South Africa. The Saturday prior to that, I had Joe Emilio, an American comedian who's based in South Africa, who has South African heritage, and that's why he's there. And then the week before that was Ovigwe Egu, a Nigerian security analyst, talking about the Lake Chad Basin and national security issues in Nigeria. And the week before that was Evans Larrabee, who's a small-scale commercial farmer based in Ghana, talking about land tenure, property rights, the challenges of agriculture in Ghana, and the lack of support or support from the government. So that was interesting. So I do that live stream where I bring in a guest and we talk about these things, and then I'll also do these stray voltage. But if you're not a subscriber, feel free to smash that subscription button right down there, subscribe to the channel, and also be sure to push the notifications bell icon so you get notifications. In theory, YouTube will tell you every time that I produce a video or I have a live stream upcoming or something scheduled. In practice, most of us know that YouTube's system is not very good and it doesn't often notify you. So you might just want to check the channel periodically on your own just to see if something's up. So that's the Straight Voltage live stream. I'm sorry, that's the subscription. If you have comments or questions, you're welcome to post those after the video on this channel. I read all comments. My channel's not so big that I can't find the time to read all the comments, so I read the comments. If they're positive, negative, that's fine. If you disagree with what I say, that's perfectly fine. I think discourse is what matters, and we should discuss things. So I'm happy to have people disagree with my opinion, and some of my loyal subscribers have actually on occasion disagreed with my opinion, and that's fine, and we both share our views, and that's good. If you're abusive, unless it's entertaining for me, I probably will ignore it. We'll see. But I do respond to some trolling, so we'll see if you do that. And finally, I ask that you smash the like button down there because the like button really helps drive viewership because the more likes you get as a percentage of the video, based on how many watch it, then it's more likely that YouTube will promote your video by putting it on people's channels. So anyway, I just asked for that. So Marty says on his stream, well, Marty, I hope you enjoyed that stream. It was, I get to talk for probably I talked about 37 minutes of that hour in there, which is a fair amount because it was his show, and I was the guest. But a lot of people formed opinions, I noticed, and assumed things. They inferred things that I never stated or never implied. So I hope that you enjoyed it and found something useful. The reason I was on Willem's channel is that I had reached out to him and asked him. I was kind of reticent to ask some South Africans to come on my channel. Some of the guests I'm getting on are people I know professionally from other places, and I'm trying to keep a variety on my weekly scheduled live stream. But I was a little shy of asking people to come on my channel when I had 31 subscribers. My 31 subscribers would have really enjoyed it, as would I. But you're asking people to donate their time, and 31 subscribers is not a big audience. So I didn't ask Willem until I was over 500 subscribers. It was still small, but I felt that he probably would like to get his message out. And I approached it from the standpoint that I want to interview him so people learn a little bit more about him. So, for instance, he studied veterinary medicine. Who knew? He knew, but many of us didn't. So what happened was I asked him to come on my channel. He said, sure. How about you come on my channel? And he said, you do it at 6 and I'll come on yours at 8. And that's kind of how it unfolded. I was going to schedule him for a week later, but he said, hey, can we do it soon? So I didn't want to miss the opportunity. So we did it like a day later or 2 days later on a Friday, just before my regular Saturday stream with him on Rose. So it was quite an exciting weekend. The amount of content from my channel was watched by people really skyrocketed. The number of people tuning in skyrocketed. The one with William Petzer, for me, I've not had a video on my channel that went over 1,000 views until that one. That's now well over 1,000 views. And but bear in mind, this channel I've had it since 2006, but I haven't been doing this until February 17th of this year. And I didn't get serious at making multiple videos and didn't even start doing live streams until the middle of March. So really in 2 months, we've grown this from a community of about 30 people up to nearly 1,500 today. So please share it with your friends, your family, your foes. If you got someone you don't like, you want to just irritate them because you think this might annoy them, then trigger them, send them over. If they get triggered, don't worry. We do therapy on this program with our therapy Hemsbach. So this will speak soothing and calm down those who take great offense or get triggered by things here on the channel. Anyway, So that's my therapy Hemsbach, a product of Africa, made in Africa. So anyway, I try to promote African businesses on here, particularly in the midst of this hysterical lockdown. So let's see what else. Let me see what else. Uh, I'm missing something. Shame on you, villain. For what? On his stream. Okay. Casper Labaskagna. Okay. I know I don't get that perfectly right, but I love that surname. It's always been cool. Zuma and Putin was known each other. Have known each other since the 70s, early 80s in Mozambique, Tanzania. Putin was KGB. Yep. And Zuma was head of intelligence for MK, Mkonto Wesizwe. That is correct. That's why Zuma became president, even though he's a buffoon. He became president because he knew where all the bodies are buried in the ANC, and he had dirt on all the senior leadership in the ANC and the South African Communist Party. So, Nazi no, legs yes. Huh? I missed that one. Mike Button, have you read the African Union 2020 Manifesto, Agenda 23, One Government, One Currency? I have read Agenda 2063. I don't recall one government. I don't think that was the push into Agenda 2633. There is intent to introduce a Africa currency, but that's a pipe dream. And also, as one government's a pipe dream, that is not going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. There are too many arrogant elites who want their hands in the pots from 54 countries, 55 countries around Africa, that is never going to happen. That is a pipe dream. Just not going to happen. I'm telling you, not in our lifetimes, probably no one's lifetimes. Marty says, awesome. Have sent your link to a few mates already. Most old SADF forces, diverse opinions, great. Well, thank you, Marty. I appreciate that sharing with your old mates from SADF. Also, feel free to ask any questions or ask views about SADF. I have a very high opinion of the South African Defense Force and its impressive campaigns with its special operations, its recce operations, and its conventional operations, in particular in Southwest Africa and in Angola. Quite an amazing force, quite an amazing military. Now, I wouldn't have wanted to have been a troopie and gone through basic training with them because it was quite brutal, as I understand, but quite impressive performance by a military that was really not resourced the way it needed to be, but accomplished quite a bit. It's unfortunate. So really, I like one of my favorite music videos is Die Kapline from Bok van Blerk. When I watch that video, I almost choke up in tears because it evokes memories for me of combat and camaraderie and service. And it's just, it's an amazing video. I think Bok van Blerk has had a lot of amazing music, but that's one of my favorites, Die Kaplan. It's absolutely amazing. For those of you who haven't watched it, you should watch that video. It truly is something else. I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah. So PPE distributors, why do you keep taking your messages away, man? What's going on? Did you say something bad? Marty said, no problem, Chris. Listen and learn from everyone impressed with your experience. Well, thank you, Marty. I appreciate that. Let's see. Dagger Boy, huck, my comment. Heck, cock. Oh, okay. Always a pleasure listening to you. Well, thank you, MJ. I really appreciate that. MJ is not Michael Jordan, right? Or is it Michel Joubert or something like that? Our angel buddy says straight leg, not airborne. Gotcha. PPE just okay. Now PPE, are you dancing there? I can't really make that out. Anyway, well, folks, thanks for tuning in so far this evening. This is Chris on Indaba Africa. I hope that you found this interesting. The topic today was, of course, as I started talking about Russia's intervention in Libya, which I hadn't really talked about in the past, not because I don't know about it, but because I didn't think it would be that much interest to folks on the channel. So if you thought it was interesting and you found it interesting, please let me know. Otherwise, I won't bother wasting people's time with that topic again. But the channel is about all of Africa, so it's not simply South Africa, although you'll notice that I do a lot of videos on South Africa, on South African wine industry, on the debunking expropriation without compensation, urging the South African government to allow South African Airways to be liquidated, on the aviation industry in South Africa, on farming in South Africa, many other things. So, hi, Chris. I was in 44 para. Oh, cool. That's awesome. That's awesome, Otter. Well, thanks a lot. That's good to know. Did you get any combat jumps in? Have I watched the movie My Father's War? Wesley, I don't think I have. Somebody asked me a question about something I watched earlier. Tercia says, at 12 tomorrow, we get to hear the command council again. Wonder if she will change what the president said. Imagine what happens if she bans alcohol. Tercia, I expect that, yes, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the president of South, the head of the National Coronavirus Command Council, will likely contradict what President Ramaphosa has told us. I think that will very much be the case. This is, frankly, ladies and gentlemen, for South Africans, not to offend anyone here, I don't think I am, but this is embarrassing. I mean, what is going on? What is passing for governance in South Africa in the midst of the Wuhan coronavirus pandemic? I mean, they said that they were going to keep hotspots at level 4, a hotspot being a place where only 5 out of every 100,000 people have tested positive for coronavirus. That's insane. That's an anomaly, 5 out of 100,000. If it was 123 out of 100,000, that's a figure. That's a concern. But 5? My goodness, you're going to find more than 5 people that have the sniffles right now from influenza or something like that. You have more people than that. They're afflicted by HIV and tuberculosis and malaria, even malaria in South Africa. Yeah, it's just, I'm shaking my head. It's embarrassing your governance that's going on there, ladies and gentlemen. I really apologize for that, but I have no control over the African National Congress. I wish I did. I wish I could do something about their insane governance is taking place. But again, this, for those who tuned in late, is from a aerial imagery released by the U.S. Africa Command today. Look at this, an intelligence resource released to the public. This is a MiG-29 Fulcrum advanced fighter interceptor jet located at Al Jufra Airfield in central Libya. This is part of 14 aircraft, Su-29 and Su-24s, which have been deployed to Libya. Having flown through Syria, at some point they were repainted to give the impression that they don't belong to the Russian government, but they do. U.S. Africa Command took the unprecedented step of releasing a public press release in which they point out what has happened here. And there's the press release right there from U.S. Africa Command. You can find it on their website at africom.mil. You can check that out if you want, but quite an unprecedented sort of thing to release that sort of intelligence just a short time after they actually photographed these aircraft. What's taking place there is that government-backed forces, which is the government recognized by the United Nations, but which does not represent all of Libya, those forces who are also backed by Turkey, who has provided drones, which has made a big impact on pushing back the forces of Khalifa Haftar, who leads the Libyan National Army, a rebel group that had advanced on Libya 13 months ago, across Libya 13 months ago, got to the gates of Tripoli and had been held back and were bogged down. Now they're retreating and pulling back, and they had at least 1,200 Russian mercenaries from the Wagner group that was participating in this offensive. And those troops were reportedly evacuated by Antonov 32 twin turboprop aircraft, taking them away. At least 7 of those aircraft were observed by people who reported this to news sources, including the mayor of the town where they were at. Subsequently, 14 advanced fighter aircraft, MiG-29s and Su-24s, were reported on the ground at Al Jufra Air Base, which is further located to the east, away from that place where these troops were evacuated from. So this gives Russia an offensive capability for close air support inside of Libya, and also will help make it possible for them to stop any advances to protect Russian private military contractors and Haftar's forces in Libya. That's what's going on. Unprecedented, unusual to see that this took place from U.S. Africa Command releasing this. Now, earlier today, the reason I mentioned all this is earlier today I was interviewed by the Washington Examiner, and in that Washington Examiner article, I was asked about my views on this. So there's the link to it if anyone wants to check it out. That appeared in the Washington Examiner today. Feel free to check that out, and you'll see my comments along with the commander of U.S. Africa Command, John Townsend, the public affairs officer, Colonel Chris Carnes, and the commander of the United States Air Force's Europe, USAFE, who talked about what's happening there. In addition to that, I was also quoted in there several times in the article. So that article was released about 3 hours ago now, nearly 4 hours ago. The internet's kind of cool. You don't have to wait the next day for the newspaper. You can actually see it the same day. That's kind of interesting. So that's really what the topic was today. We started talking about, I anticipated that the President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech would be a big nothing. And so I didn't intend on doing a live stream for that. But when when I got an email this morning from the Washington Examiner asking about what's happening in Libya, I said, well, you know what? Maybe I ought to do a stream on that today. Didn't know that they wanted to quote me, but they did quote me in the article. And then I scheduled the stream earlier today after I planned to do it after I came back from doing a little bit of shopping. Anyway, so I hope that this has been informative and gets folks a little bit more information about what's happening in the northern part of Africa, in Libya, and hopefully you find that useful. Cusper says, I only joined late, but I'm certainly very interested in Libya, which we'll watch first part. I missed later tonight. South Africans fought under Montgomery in Libya during war. Yes, they did, Casper. They sure did. South Africans absolutely did fight under Montgomery. And in the First World War, South Africans were the key component of the force that deployed to German Southwest Africa, defeated the Schutztruppe, and in 1915 took control of German Southwest Africa. Now, the South Africans who fought under Jan Christian Smuts in Tanganyika were far less successful. The Germans were never defeated in Tanganyika, and Colonel, then later promoted to General Paul Leto von Vorbeck, successfully led his Askari force of African troops, German officers and NCOs through the bush in a guerrilla campaign, a highly successful guerrilla campaign, which saw him traversing all over Tanganyika, the Belgian Congo, into Mozambique, and eventually into Rhodesia as well. Quite an amazing campaign led by Paul Leto von Voorbeck. So the South Africans who were present in that campaign never defeated him. But it's tough to defeat guerrillas, particularly when they're as well led as the Askari were by Paul Leto von Voorbeck and his small contingent of German reservist and active duty officers and NCOs who fought that campaign very successfully, tying down over 500,000 British Empire troops in East Africa for extended periods of time, troops that were desperately needed in Western Europe to end the conflict there. So Paul Leto von Voorbeck was treated as a national hero when he returned to Germany after the Germans capitulated and the armistice took place. In fact, he didn't believe the armistice when it happened. The Belgians, because he was in the Belgian Congo, sent a messenger by bicycle with a telegram to Paul Leto von Voorbeck to convince him that the armistice was genuine. And after he got a note from Berlin telling him it was true, he finally surrendered his small forces. Quite an amazing leader. He had experience in the Boxer Rebellion in China, also in other Asian German colonies, and he had been in Southwest Africa previously. I don't recall if he fought in the Herero campaign. I think he might have, but later became the commander of the Schutztruppe, the protection force, colonial troops in Tanganyika. Yep, absolutely. He was so popular with his troops that when he came back to Tanganyika, another 20 years later after the war, when the Nazis already taken over Germany, he took a trip back to Tanganyika. There was a huge parade for him in Dar es Salaam. Thousands and thousands of people showed up to venerate and pay their respects to the old man. It was quite amazing. He was quite popular. He was an aristocrat, but quite an effective military leader. So that's Paul Leto von Voorbeck and the German East Africa campaign from 1914 to 1918. You should check that out in history, folks. It's quite amazing. There's an interesting side note on the lake there, Lake Victoria. They had this German ship, which is still being used as a ferry service there recently in past years, that the Germans had put into service, and it was used as a gunboat on the lake. And then the Brits carried parts of two boats overland to rebuild these boats called Mimi and Tutu on the lake to fight against the Germans. Quite a fascinating side note in the history of the First World War. But Paul Leto von Voorbeck. Let's see what I miss here. Should have fought alongside Rommel. Chris, have you heard of the Berber people in Northern Africa? Some of them seem pretty white to me. Or are they just some other ethnic group? Yeah, Berbers are a different ethnic group. Some of them lighter skinned, but most of them kind of an olive-colored skin. They're not Arabs. They're, if you want to say, the indigenous population that was living in Northern Africa for a long period of time. They have unique customs and traditions. Most of them speak Arabic, and they also speak Berber languages, of which are unintelligible to me. I lived in Tunisia, which has a small Berber population, and I've been to Morocco many times. In fact, the majority of the population in Morocco is not Arab, it's Berber. 60% of the people who live in Morocco are Berber. And so that's the largest concentration of Berbers in the world is in Morocco. They have interesting marriage customs and very interesting people. One of the things I did in Tunisia is I used to buy what are called the voix de mariage. They're these blankets that are made for weddings. And women would hold on to these things as family keepsakes. But what happened is a lot of them would sell them later on to raise money, and you could buy them in shops. And so I have a lot of them. They usually come in this beautiful cherry red and black with elaborate patterns. And if I remember, I'll bring one up to later live stream, and I'll hold up and show it to people so you can look at it. But they usually come in this cherry red and black, quite elaborate, quite beautiful, all hand sewn by the bride herself. And then they also have more rarely in a blue and white and other colors, but the blue and white's quite amazing, hard to come by. In fact, I have one, but the edge of it was burnt from a campfire from the Berbers living out in the wild, in the remote areas, and then it was too close to a campfire, so the edge got burned, but they still sold it because it's quite elaborate and quite beautiful. They're very expensive too. They're hard to come by, but I have several of them, and I have a nice collection of those that I bought when I was in Tunisia over 20 years ago. Yeah, so the Berbers are interesting people. They are the majority of the population in Morocco, but in the rest of North Africa, they're a minority. And in Tunisia, they're a very small minority. There's a lot of them in Algeria still. But you pretty much, Tunisia is where you run out of Berbers. You don't go past there. From Morocco, across the Atlas Mountains, all the way to Tunisia, you find Berbers. Right. Make sure I don't miss something here. Somebody had a stint with executive outcomes. Okay. PP, how do we get our business promoted, Chris? Nice idea. Well, PPE distributors, you send me an email and let me learn about your business, and I'd be happy to promote it on here if you like. Give me a banner or a short video that I can run, and I'll take a look at it. As long as you're not involved in human trafficking or illicit activity, I'm probably pretty happy to promote your business on my stream. Tonight we have a small number of folks. I think it's a combination of other people streaming right now, and maybe this topic wasn't of interest to some people. But of late, I've had 75 to 100 concurrent viewers on the stream, and usually I'm getting 400 or 500 views on the video during the course of the live stream, which is pretty cool because I've been cutting the length of the live streams. I was doing this superhuman marathon 4-hour live stream, which was a bit much. So I've cut it back now to an hour and a half, usually at most. But I'm happy to promote your products if it's something I can believe in. So PPE distributors, look me up. Those who want to send me an email and have a question for me or comment, you want to tell me you don't like my beard or I should shave it off or you love the beard or whatever, you can find my email address on the channel by going to, don't open a new tab or you'll lose the live stream. Going to my channel, and on my channel you'll see the tabs up there, and across the top you'll see videos and several other tabs, but to the far right you'll see the About tab. Under About, that'll be a description of my channel. Below that, along with a video, an introductory video, I think, a description of the channel, and below that you'll see email address for business use. Click on that. It'll bring up a little window so they can check on it to make sure you're not a bot, so you don't get flooded with email. Once that's clicked and it's stopped, then you can push it and it will reveal my email address. And you can send me an email there. So PPE distributors, if you want to do that, please do it. And I'll be happy to take a look at that. And most likely I'll probably add you to my list of folks that I'm providing advertising for, free advertising. Yep. My channel is not monetized for those who don't know. You may have not realized that. That was intentional. I may monetize it at some point in the future. But at the moment it's not monetized. So I know people tried to super chat me. There's no super chat because I'm not monetized. And I appreciate that. It's a thought. It's very kind of folks. Actually, setting these things up takes a little bit of capital. I mean, the lights are professional. The Yeti microphone's professional. That's $100 US, not South African rand. So, it's like 10,000 rand, right? $100. Anyway, so yeah, any money that I make on the channel will probably, if I do that when I go monetize, will probably play a role and help me upgrade and improve things. I'm about to buy a new desk and also some wall art, so I don't use my map because when I use my mobile phone, the phone keeps doing this. Those who watch my videos, it's trying to autofocus all the time, and I can't shut that down. It's very distracting. So I want to put some wall art up that covers the world. So I have that behind me, and a newsstand, or not newsstand, but a stand behind me so I can put a few things on it. So doing some improvements here to make the channel more aesthetically appealing and more interesting for folks. So when I do monetize it, I'll just recoup some of that money potentially if I make any money off the channel. Anyway, and who knows, these days maybe even donate the money to help, some of the money to help folks who are suffering during the COVID-19 crisis. So what have I missed over here? You guys are chatting with each other and you're switching off for cons there, which is cool. Daga Boy and Bismarck Bear, you guys are going at it, man. Bosch Zebra, you have to agree to YouTube's requirements. You have to have, I think, 1,000 subscribers, and you have to have, I think, 4,000 hours of content viewing within 12 months in order to become monetized. That's what they require on YouTube. Then, of course, YouTube takes a hefty 30% of the proceeds, at least in South Africa. I don't know what they take here in the U.S. I think it's also 30%. But I know in Uganda, reported they take 45% of your proceeds. Oh, hey, I got something for you guys. So that's kind of how you get your channel monetized, and you have to conform to their standards. So, which is fine. Their standards are out of control. But here you go. What do you guys think of this? So that'll be something I'll probably put up when I get my studio set up a little better. I got this from Lowe's. It actually has the current U.S. Army logo there, the little star thing. So anyway, I thought I might put this thing up. Where we go? There we go. Make sure the reflection's not bad. Since 1775, it's the oldest branch of the U.S. military, established in 1775, the U.S. Army. There you go. A veteran of 36 years in the Army. I thought this would be kind of cool to put up in my background. So what do you guys think of that? Tommy Coetzee, welcome aboard. Good to see you there. You're joining kind of late, but that's fine. You can always go back and watch it from the beginning if you like. Yeah. So anyway, that's something I'd like to put up on my my little studio once I get it set up a little bit better here. But anyway, Chris auction something. Yeah, I could do an auction. That would be something to do. I will not be auctioning my therapy Hemsbach. No, he's not going anywhere. No. Hemsbach are cool, but I really like kudu. That's my favorite from that ungulate family there. Point to TV. Nice poster. Well, thanks, Brolix Bitterguile. Wow, that's an interesting one. Okay. Well, thank you very kindly. I appreciate that. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I like that. I got that from, like I said, Lowe's, the home improvement store. They have lots of things, so kind of cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, any other questions that jump out in your mind? We're up at an hour and 20 minutes here. I'll plan on going an hour and 30, then cut it off there, unless we suddenly get really engaging questions here. Between Dagaboy and Bismarck Bear, there's some sort of conversation going on there. I'm not going to intrude in on that. But if you've got questions about Libya or about what's happening, just let me know, and we'll take a look at that and go from there. But once again, if you want to check out the article, as I said, I was quoted today in the Washington Examiner, and they ran an article on the situation in Libya, and so I was quoted on there. So there's the link if you want to go to it and check it out. Also, I appeared yesterday on Joe Emilio's show, The Joe Show. Joe is an American comedian with South African heritage who's based in South Africa, and we talked about 9/11. Yesterday was Memorial Day here in the U.S., so it was just kind of serendipitous. Did on his program, excuse me, we talked about 9/11, the events of 9/11, because it was a topic he wanted to talk about, and he talked about his perspective, having living in Egypt at the time as an American. And my experience, I was in Tunisia, not too far away from him when 9/11 happened. So we shared our experiences, talked a little bit about it, and touched on the conspiracy theories that come around 9/11. And then shortly after that, I did my stream to recognize Memorial Day, which is the day, it's a federal holiday here in the United States, first established in 1967, but took effect in 1971. But the actual holiday goes back to the end of the Civil War in about 1868 when veterans groups started holding ceremonies in April and May to recognize those who have fallen in the course of the Civil War and who are buried in large cemeteries in the South and around the United States, primarily the South. So that holiday goes back to that time. We have three holidays tied to the military. One is Memorial Day. That's for those who've fallen in service to the government, and it includes all sorts of conflicts in our history. That's one. That's on the last Monday of every May. Then earlier in May, we have Armed Forces Day, which recognizes serving armed forces active duty military members. And that was a holiday that I shared in from 1983 until this year. This is the first year I've not served in uniform since 1983. So that holiday is no longer for me. It's just for my brethren who are still serving. And then the final is Veterans Day, which is November 11th every year. It's set to that date, which for Commonwealth countries like South Africa, you think of Remembrance Day because that's what it is. It's a day to remember the 11th day, the 11th month, the 11th hour, when the armistice took effect to end the First World War. So Commonwealth countries celebrate it as that day. So that one is similar. Remembrance Day, from a Commonwealth perspective, is similar to our Memorial Day. Same sort of thing, but we do it at different times. So those are three holidays tied to the American military. Only two of them are federal holidays. Veterans Day and Memorial Day are federal holidays, so the federal government is shut down. Our embassies and consulates are shut down around the world, as well as our agencies here in the States. And then Armed Forces Day is a federally recognized date, but it's not actually a holiday, so people don't get days off for that. How to uncommunize a South African government? Well, start with the 2021 municipal elections, ladies and gentlemen. You must go out and vote for opposition parties in droves. You must recruit 18-year-olds who came of age since the last election in 2019, and you must assiduously go after those folks to get them to vote for your party, your opposition party. And if you're not involved in the opposition party and you're angry about what's happening in South Africa, I encourage you to get involved in an opposition party and get the word out about what that party is. It's high time that many Black South Africans stop voting for the ANC simply because it supposedly was the party of liberation. It was but one actor in the liberation era, and it doesn't deserve all the credit which it tries to steal. And it certainly is not the only actor who helped end apartheid. And its governance since then has been questionable, particularly in the last 15 years. It's time for people to start voting for the ANC, not based on an image, but based on performance, and that is quite lacking. In the face of the Wuhan coronavirus and the lockdown in South Africa, the ANC government's actions are hysterically crazy in many respects. The cigarette ban, the ban on e-commerce, the criminalization of citizens, law-abiding citizens, for going about doing normal behavior rather than simply giving them a caution or warning and telling them to go home, but actually dragging them off to prison around police officers who can't be bothered to wear protective masks and potentially infecting those who are innocently moving about. So yeah, you got to get out, you've got to vote, you've got to get people, those who've come of age, and more importantly, you've got to go find the 2-3 million South Africans who don't bother to vote anymore, including in South Africa, a large number of whites and colored voters who don't bother because they've just lost interest in the process. Well, that's your fault if the ANC is still ruling the country and you're complaining about it. You need to get out and do something about it. It is very possible for the opposition to win in 2021 the municipalities of Cape Town, Nelson Mandela Bay, Johannesburg, and Tshwane, or Pretoria. Very easy. In Pretoria and Johannesburg, the Democratic Party approached or exceeded 40% of the vote. However, the ANC was the plurality in Johannesburg. The DA was plurality in Pretoria, Shwana. In Nelson Mandela Bay, the DA had 45% of the vote, and the ANC had only 38%, but they could not take the majority. There's a small, narrow number of votes that the opposition parties, and in particular the DA, for instance, need to capture to win those municipalities in 2021. You win those municipalities in 2021, you don't have all the answers because the national government provides funding and still can interfere in local governance, but you have an opportunity to show contrast to what the ANC has done under lockdown and all its failed policies like BEE, expropriation without compensation, the National Health Insurance Scheme, and a host of other racially discriminatory practices which have harmed all South Africans. All South Africans are harmed by this nonsense. So you must, as opposition parties, whether the Freedom Front Plus, the UDM, the ACDP, the DA, God forbid the EFF, I'm not encouraging them to do anything, but all opposition parties must go out and drive the ANC below 50%. It would be nice to see them drop below 40%. That may be a pipe dream in some places, but you start with 2021 and you start today, not next year. You start today. You start campaigning. Now that the government is not locking you down starting June 1st, opposition parties should be out and getting in touch with voters, making sure that they contact and are in contact with voters. It's not the university students. That's a small percentage of the youth. That's a small percentage of the vote. You got to get to South Africans where they live, in townships, in the countryside, in the metro areas. You got to get there, ladies and gentlemen. If you're an opposition party, you can't simply be a party for blacks. You can't simply be a party for whites. The Inkatha Freedom Party ought to be reaching out to far more than just Zulus. They ought to be reaching out to Khoisan, to white South Africans who live in KZN and other places. That's what you do. And that is achievable. The ANC nearly lost control of Gauteng in the most recent national elections, and they did lose control of Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Nelson Mandela Bay, much to their shock in the 2016 municipal elections. Unfortunately for South Africans, the Democratic Alliance lost the plot and tried to become the ANC light and lost a lot of support. And so opposition parties need to get their act together, but that's what you can do. All right. Do you want some Bush War memorabilia of Cuban and SADC kit? Oh, wow, moderate. That would be cool. I won't want the Cuban crap, though. That's not the SADF kit. That'd be cool. I don't really care about Cuban stuff. I've got Iraqi stuff from the first Gulf War. You know, it's not really, including the currency the CIA printed to destroy their money. How would USA look like if England won the Revolutionary War, Lone Wolf? Well, it would have been a long time after that before America got its independence, and I have no idea how it would look. It's very likely that the current United States wouldn't exist. The Spanish would have retained Florida and Louisiana Purchase, and or France would have kept it, depending on which point in time who owned it, because both owned that, Spain and the French owned it at different times. And that the United States we see today would likely be at least three different countries. You'd see Spanish possessions, which became a country of their own. You might see the old Southwest, California, New Mexico, Arizona would have been a country or would have been remained part of Mexico, likely would have become its own country. Florida might have become its own country in its own right under Spanish control or Spanish speaking, or maybe in French, they already had gone there with Fort Caroline, but then were defeated. So you might see the French. And then you would see the eastern side of the United States up to the Mississippi likely being yet another country or even part of Canada. So yeah, it's hard to say. That's a counterfactual that's tough to go with. You'd have to pick a point in time, and we'd have to pick specific events, because when the United States won its independence, and it was agreed to at the Peace of Paris in 1783, after a long revolutionary conflict, we were just 13 small colonies, which became 13 states, huddled along the eastern seaboard of the United States, along with some open, territory to the west where Native Americans lived, and settlers were prohibited from going, but of course they went there. So anyway, hard to counterfactualize that one. Sad truth is you don't want to be right. Bismarck says, Chris, if you are looking for a person to host Mass Jess, why not do the ex-Recce caption in Angola? He has a YouTube channel. Yeah, I have to check his channel because it's been promoted to me several times. So I'm familiar with him in passing. I know a bit about his story, but not all of it. Let me take a look, and maybe he'll be a guest. Like I say, guys, my channel's not just South Africa, so I try to mix my guests up on Saturday, so it's not just South Africa. It's just coincidental that I had two two South African guests in a row. That happened because my previous guest was supposed to be an urban sheep herder from the Netherlands. It sounds a little esoteric, but it's actually quite interesting. And she bailed on me. She wasn't able to do the streams, didn't tell me till like Friday night, and I had to scramble to find someone. And that Saturday, I mentioned it, I think on Ronaldo's channel or Ramon's channel, and I asked Joe if he'd be willing to come, or he offered. So Joe Amelia came to my channel, and we had quite a good audience that turned up for that. So that was a kind of a surprise event. And I have nothing against having lots of South Africans on my channel, but if I turn my Saturday stream into now my stream with Willem Petzer was on a Friday, so I've had three South African guests in a row. But I'd be happy to have a fourth one in a row. I'm supposed to have Komi Klou, who's a Ghanaian American economist, and we're going to be talking about African debt this coming Saturday on my channel, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That'd be 5 p.m. in Johannesburg and Gaborone, 4 p.m. in London and Abuja, for those who want to tune in. Now, Comey, I'm still waiting for his commitment. He promised to do it, but we haven't narrowed down this week specifically, so I expect to see him Saturday. If not, maybe I can reach out to Dutoy and see if he's interested. Let's see. Is Rattle still alive? Doggy Boy says, what is the possibility of an Afrikaner homeland since EWC is going to happen one way or another? I don't know that EWC is going to happen one way or another, Doggy Boy. You already have expropriation with compensation, which is possible today. And there's actually no legitimate reason to change that. The government has all the resources at its disposal to resolve land issues. They're simply not serious about it in a way that they need to be serious about it. I don't know that EWC is going to happen. When EWC happens, the South African government will automatically disqualify from the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which will cost the South African economy several $billion of trade instantly. Tariffs will go up and it will cripple their trade. We buy BMW spare parts for our BMWs in America from South Africa where they're manufactured. Not because we like South Africa, but because of the artificial tax advantage. There are no tariffs on those BMW parts that are shipped to America. So they wind up being less expensive and more affordable than the parts that are manufactured in Germany with high labor costs. And then there are tariffs on goods coming from EU countries, but not from South Africa because it qualifies for the African Growth and Opportunity Act. Now, that doesn't mean the ANC won't be just stupid and pigheaded and say, well, we're going to do this anyway. I think that the whole thing with EWC is simply a populist move to slow down support for the terrifying prospect for the ANC that the EFF would climb to 15 or 20% of the popular vote. I think their plateau is 15%. They haven't reached that yet. I think that's the max they could ever get under normal circumstances. Even under these extraordinary circumstances, right now, I don't think they can get above 15%. But the ANC fears that. And so they were hot on EWC. I think that they'll back off of that. We'll see. I could be entirely wrong. I hope that I'm right about that. But South Africa, if it approves expropriation without compensation, game over, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not saying the UN is going to do anything, but Western European countries and the United States will abandon South Africa, and trade links will dry up in many respects. We don't need the things South Africa has. We can buy our BMW parts from Europe, from Belgium, where they're manufactured, not Belgium, from Germany, where they're manufactured, and other parts of Europe where BMW makes parts. We can get them from there. We can buy our wine from other countries, Australia, from Argentina, from Germany, from Italy, from France. We don't need South African wine. There's very little South Africa sends the United States that we can do that we need. We don't need your gold. South Africa is barely in even the top 10 for gold producers now, with just 101 tons produced last year, down from 1,000 tons produced each year back in 1970. So South Africa, which once led the world gold production, is just a minor player when it comes to gold these days. China is the world's largest gold producer every year. Platinum, we don't need your platinum as much as we needed in the past. There are alternative minerals we can use. There are lots of things South Africans put in the world market, but we can get them elsewhere for the most part. So we don't need South Africa when it comes to trade. We're shipping chicken parts that people here don't like to eat normally, and South Africans do eat them. But frankly, those things were being thrown away before. That market would just dry up and be thrown away. So the ANC really needs to pay attention to what's going on and get off this EWC kick, because it's eviscerated property values, it's undermined commerce, and it has undermined credit for farmers and for people who want to build in South Africa, because you can't buy land. Your tenure is not secure. What the South African government needs to do is be serious. If you want to know about this, I wrote an article called Land and Poverty in South Africa about 2 years ago. And that article is on my LinkedIn profile. You go under the credits underneath, you'll see my LinkedIn profile. You can go there, go under articles, and you'll find that article. And you can read it, tell me what you think about it. You can comment there or tell me I'm on another live stream. But I discuss this whole issue of expropriation without compensation and the foolishness of it and how it undermines. At a time when most of the world is moving towards trying to resolve land tenure and be responsible about it, South Africa is trying to go the opposite direction, undermine land tenure. The path that Zimbabwe has chosen, in which you issue 99-year leases, is absolutely nonsense. It's ridiculous. It's not land ownership, and the government can cancel leases at any time, and then banks are left holding debt that they can't recoup any tangible assets on. You undermine commerce, you undermine trade, you undermine economic development when people can't own a tangible asset that a bank can repossess should you fail to repay your loan. Anyway, that's a long story there, but we're not going to go into that now. So let's see. Team D, would fly. Okay. Dog Boy, I hope I'm right too. Because South Africa actually does that. It's going to be a mess. Have you read Franz Cronje's new book, The Rise and Fall of South Africa? I have not, Ice. I've not read Franz Cronje's book. Although I heard some of the things I talked about, how South African opposition parties can win in South Africa and what's going to happen to the ANC at the polls. I'm seeing that some people are attributing some of those things to Franz Cronje. So he may have said them. I don't know. I haven't really followed him. I know who he is. Helium. Well, yeah, helium's important, but it's not that important, and it can be found elsewhere. It is a rare resource, though. Moderate says they took American aid to pay Cuban doctors. Yes and no. Okay, so in theory, yes, you can make that point, but the money didn't go to pay the Cuban doctors. It went for actual diagnostic equipment, training, things like that. But the equivalent of what the Americans gave was $8.4 million we gave in cash up front to the ANC, and that works out to, what, 180 million rand or something like that, the current exchange rate, something like that. They paid the Cuban doctors 445 million service fee for those Cuban doctors to come to South Africa. So yes, they took money from one place and wasted on Cuban doctors that were unnecessary as part of their fellow traveler brotherhood with fellow communists, and that was a problem. And it wiped out the money that was provided by the Americans. So yeah, pretty stupid of them. But there you have it. It's true what you say. Hey, Kyle, I didn't see you here earlier. Basically, the SA government should not scratch where there's no edge. Yeah, I like that. I says, honestly, I don't think the ANC will let the UFC go. It's how they will look to get as much land owned by the state. Already, well, South African government's already one of the largest landowners in South Africa. With 87% of the land being non-arable, there isn't a whole lot of use for a lot of land in South Africa other than grazing and for residential production or residential construction. Yeah, Cuban doctors. Bulk says the EWC means votes for the ANC. They will do what's necessary to stay in power. Yes, I agree. But they have also foolishly, without realizing, done a lot of damage to their own reputation with the Wuhan coronavirus hysterical lockdown in South Africa. And as long as opposition parties don't let go of that and use the footage of people being dragged into vehicles like it's 1985 in Soweto, white, black, colored Asians is happening to, they're going to pay a terrible price at the poll, and they should by all rights. But if the opposition doesn't focus and harp on this incessantly from June 1st onwards, then the ANC could remain in power in the municipalities in 2021. The key is in the municipalities, you can deliver services and you can show people on a local level that you care about their interest and you're involved in their daily needs. If you do that, you can have an impact. 2024 is a long way off. The ANC has a lot of time to reset. They can learn their lessons. They're not going to, but they could. And people can forget. Attention spans of human beings is remarkably short. It's always driven me nuts about how people can forget about what a government has done so quickly. Here in the United States, right now, a lot of people are excited about the fact that the Obamagate scandal is coming to light. Well, many of us have known about this for 3 or 4 years and been wondering what's going on, and nothing's happened. There have been no prosecutions of senior government officials for their criminal conduct. And also, people have quickly forgotten about how the Internal Revenue Service was used as a weapon against nonprofit organizations, political groups from the Tea Party movement, and pretty much eviscerated the Tea Party movement between the fraudulent reporting about them in the mainstream media, lying about the role of the Tea Party and who they were, calling them a bunch of racist and things like that, which is utter nonsense. I'm a Tea Party supporter. I'm about small government. I'm about individual liberties. I'm about community. And that's what the Tea Party was all about. I wasn't active in it because I was a serving officer, but I supported them. The media lying about them, and then the government intentionally misusing government resources, government agencies to go after these political groups, which are allowed to be nonprofit organizations. Yeah, but they've forgotten all about Lois Lerner and the IRS. They've forgotten about the Obama administration going after James Rosen, the journalist from the New York Times, spying on him unlawfully, looking into his emails, his telephone communications on the basis of no legal justification whatsoever. These are violations of the Constitution, violations of civil rights, and these are criminal acts, and no one has been prosecuted for these. And it's not a secret, it's not conspiracy. These are facts. These have been revealed by the government, the information themselves. And yet no one remembers. It's all forgotten about. It's only about Orange Man bad. So yeah, it's up to opposition parties and civil liberty groups and civic groups and unions and community organizations to remind people and to get the 2 to 3 million South Africans who don't bother to vote in normal national elections, which will be even higher, probably about 3 or 4 million who don't bother to vote in municipal elections, to get some of those people to come back and vote. Also, for parties like Democratic Alliance, which in the 2019 national election lost 445,000 votes from 2014, they will have to get those votes to come out and vote for them in 2021 and 2024. And then also for parties like the Inkatha Freedom Party to move beyond simply just being the party of the Zulus. Much like the DA was looked at as the party of whites in South Africa for a long period of time, I think invalidly for part of that time, the IFP needs to be something more than simply a party of Zulus, and you have to appeal to a wider base. Otherwise, the opposition is fractured and the ANC will remain in power. But the ANC can be booted from power, and they will do everything they can to stay in power. I agree with that point. I misunderstood your message was aimed at Dagaboy. Russian collusion turned into a nightmare for the Dems. Yeah, if only moderate, if only it turned into a nightmare for them. What consequences will they pay? We will see in November if they pay at the polls. They should pay dearly at the polls. And the entire fraudulent impeachment of Donald Trump, they should pay. They should pay. Now, in the late 1990s, Bill Clinton was impeached, and not for illegitimate reasons. He committed felonies, and so he was impeached as a consequence of that. But it backfired on the Republicans who pushed it, because a lot of Americans who didn't understand what was actually happening fell prey to what the media told them and what political analysts told them, and thought, well, it's just sexual innuendos, not sexual imbroglio. He's got involved in sex with an intern, so what? Who cares? It wasn't about that. That was the proximate cause of how he wound up being impeached. But that's not why he was impeached. He was impeached for lying to Congress and for obstruction of justice and a number of other things. But it backfired on Republicans. Will the Russia collusion fantasy backfire on the Democrats in 2020? We'll see in November. I don't hold out a lot of confidence it will, but I do think that Trump will run away with the election. The question is what will happen in the House. By rights, the House should revert to Republican control, and they should gain seats in the Senate. We'll see. Time will tell. Let's see what else. Phone keyboard. Okay, something going on, I don't know. Right, so, Kyle, you're on Telegram. You share the business link with him for Roman's business network. Are you talking about the advertising thing? So, okay, that's fine. Here's the once again, the link on the Washington Examiner article, because earlier today I was interviewed by the Washington Examiner for an article, and I was in good company. General Townsend, Stephen Townsend, the commander of U.S. AFRICOM, was interviewed. The commander of U.S. Air Force's Africa, USAFE, was interviewed, as well as Colonel Carnes, the public affairs officer at U.S. Africa Command, who's a colleague of mine. We're all interviewed, as was I, for this article, so it was kind of interesting for me, a little bit exciting to see myself on the Washington Examiner today. There's a link for it. You can check out that article if you like. And what we're talking about when it comes to that is the subject of Libya, and that's what this image is up in the corner here. That is a Libyan MiG-29, not Libyan, excuse me, a Russian MiG-29 Fulcrum at a Libyan airfield in Al Jufra in the center of Libya. And on my image here, you can't see it so well, but I highlighted in green. That's right there in the center. So if you look in the center of the image, you'll see that. Anyway, the Africa Command, U.S. Africa Command, took the unusual step of releasing a public press release in which they mentioned that the Russians had deployed 14 MiG-29 and Su-24 aircraft to Libya, to this base, and it's given them an option here in Libya, which they didn't have previously. This is an effort to support the state-backed Wagner Group, or Wagner Group, a private military contractor, which has at least 1,200 Russian mercenaries fighting with the forces of Khalifa Haftar. Did I get that right? I mispronounce his name sometimes. Yeah. Khalifa Haftar. And so those have been fighting with the Libyan National Army, which is a rebel group that has advanced last year on Tripoli, got almost to the gates of Tripoli when they were bogged down, and for 13 months was in a static situation. Now government forces backed by Turkey have been advancing using Turkish drones to take out resources. The Russians have picked up and moved 1,200 mercenaries out of the direct conflict, moved them further to the south using Antonov 32 twin turboprop aircraft to evacuate them. Reportedly, at least 7 of those aircraft were spotted moving these folks. Those aircraft can carry 42 paratroopers or 50 civilians, so you can get probably about 50 military personnel on there if they're not paratroopers with their kit, and then fly them out at each stretch. So about 350. 7 aircraft can carry 350 troops out, so it'd take about 4 rotations to get everybody out of there and evacuated. But these combat fighter aircraft are advanced, 4th generation, latest sort of thing. The MiG-29, although it's been around for a good 30 years now, is very advanced with the current avionics that's in the aircraft. So these things were observed by Africa Command, disclosed to the public that they observed them flying through Syria And at some point, they were repainted to hide the fact that these are actually Russian military aircraft. But they are Russian military aircraft. No private military corporation has this kind of capacity or capability and cannot maintain these aircraft. Only a government or state could do this at this stage in our history. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. The Russians are actively involved in Libya, which they deny. But that's nonsense. They can't deny it. The evidence is there. The article by Abraham Mashahi, who is a journalist for the Washington Examiner, is on that link right there. You can check it out. ICE says, I recall Trump will get more than Obama or Bush Sr., around 54%. Reagan got 58 and 84. Yeah, anything over 55% is a trouncing in this political climate. So yeah, I think that Trump will win the Electoral College. He'll also win the popular vote outright. I think that's the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. So there you have it. So there's that. Now that's aerial imagery. That's intelligence that the U.S. Africa Command has shared with the world. So let me show this again for those who came in late. Let me get your thoughts on this. I'm going to put this up behind me at some point. Being an Army veteran and proud 36-year U.S. Army retiree, I got this at a local Lowe's last week, and I thought it was kind of cool. I thought I'd put it up in the background. I like the gray and the white and black rather than something flashy. The only color, of course, is down here in the corner with the current U.S. Army symbol. So U.S. Army since 1775, the oldest branch of the U.S. military. There you go. That's kind of cool. I think it's kind of cool. If you don't like it, let me know. ICE says it's pretty awesome. Yeah, I think so too. So that'll be part of my background here at some point. I'll get that set up. I'm looking to make the studio more professional looking rather than just my spare dining room that I'm broadcasting out of. Okay, so the group you're referring to is Roman's channel, a network for people who have skills that can help each other out if they need help. Really good way to support each other here in SA. Oh, I'm not familiar with it. I'm familiar with his Renegade Report channel, and I actually might wind up being a podcaster on there. Roman and I are talking about that, so we'll see what happens. Marty's taking off. Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate you being here. Yeah, I think a lot of folks taking off. I said I go to about 145. It's 146. So what I'd like to do now, folks, is before I run off, I'll just start playing in the background here. For those who have not listened to the concert from Giselle, a fantastic musician. People keep telling me to come appear on Big Daddy Liberty's program. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I've written to Big Daddy Liberty twice, about a week apart, and I've not heard back from him. No accusations, nothing. He's not under no obligation to respond to me. But I wrote to him saying, hey, listen, people keep telling me we should get together on a stream or I should appear on your stream. Either he doesn't read his email because he's a busy guy or he's not interested. I don't know which it is, but I'm happy to go on Big Daddy Liberty's channel. But if you want to see that happen, I think that you've got to go contact Big Daddy Liberty and mention me to him. Otherwise, I'm not going to appear on his channel. I'm just saying. So that's for anybody that wanted me to appear on his channel, that you're going to have to do that because I have not heard back from Big Daddy Liberty. So anyway, so if you want me to appear on Big Daddy Liberty's channel, please go right to Big Daddy Liberty. Let him know that Chris Wyatt's out there and would be interested in appearing on his channel. And I would be happy to do that, ladies and gentlemen. I've listened to a little bit of what he said, and I find his comments are pretty much in alignment with mine when it comes to the government and communism. Die Taal is in ons bloed, for those who speak Afrikaans. Yes, that's Giselle, Namibian singer, singing for ons mensen in the background. Fantastic performer. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's great. Big Daddy Liberty has been having some internet issues, especially his house, but I'm sure he'd love to chat with you. Well, you need to tell Big Daddy Liberty that. Maybe he'll reach out to me. I wound up on Roman's program because Roman heard me on Ronaldo's program. And I got Willem Petzer to come on my channel because he heard me on Roman's program and found it interesting. So I don't know if Big Daddy Liberty is watching these other streams. So feel free to let him know about me, and I'd be happy maybe even bring him on my stream and see if we can't get some discussion going. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's about an hour and 48 minutes into this. I intended to go an hour and a half. As usual, I've gone over. So for those who are angry about that, that's on me, and my apologies. But I hope you found it interesting. And once again today, Russia has intervened in an obvious and indisputable manner in Libya. That was the purpose of today's stream. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see what transpires tomorrow. But ladies and gentlemen, have a pleasant evening. I might do a video on the Russian intervention, a stream video, a premiere video later on. But thanks a lot. Lone Wolf, you're most welcome for the show. Thanks for tuning in. Please share it with your friends. Everyone have a pleasant evening. I'm going to close now, and God bless and be safe out there.